Hi, I'm Jennifer from Shabby Fabrics. We're on the final block of the intermediate quilt. This is the flower basket block. It's one of my favorites. And purple, I love purple, and my affection for purple is actually growing. We'll be using the simple 7/8 inch ruler and also the 6.5 by 12.5. So let's go ahead and start with the first cut. And I wanted to mention how you can use your rulers in combination to grow a ruler. What am I talking about with that? In this particular block, both out of the purple, this fabric here, and out of the white, we need to cut one 6 7/8 inch triangle, which of course will start with a square and then cut it on the diagonal. But you'll say, Jen, you know, this ruler is 5 7/8 and you want me to cut 6 7/8. How do I do that? So let's visit that and let's go ahead. First thing we'll do is we'll use our 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. I'm just going to square up my fabric to start with. Have a nice clean edge. Now this ruler does end at 5 7/8, but I only need to add an inch to that. So let's use our 6.5 by 12.5 inch ruler. Let's line up with our fabric. And again, I'm going to move off the line. I want to move off the line because it's almost hard for me to see the lines here and the lines here to know what I'm doing. I'm going to line up with my 1 inch running right along that edge. And if I add my 5 7/8 inch ruler to that, and I butt that directly up top, directly against it, I have 6 7/8 inch. So you can use your rulers in combination to get bigger cuts than what your ruler is actually the width of that ruler, which is great. I love that. I love how I can have more utility. I don't have to have a sewing room full of all these various size rulers when I have the ability to take a ruler I really enjoy using and make it accommodate the size that I need for my project. So let's try that again. Let's butt that 1 inch. I'm going to move that off the line again. It's so much easier for me to just to see this line. It's the only thing I want to be looking at right now. I have my 1 inch. I'm going to hold that nice and steady so it doesn't move. Bump that right up against it. Hold them both and give a cut. And then we're just cutting once on the diagonal. And we'll be using only one here. You can put the one aside and use that for another project, another day, and the other one will be here. The rest of it, you have 2 rectangles and everything else is simply triangles. And the assembly is pretty straightforward, but let's walk through that process. These are 3 7/8 inch. Again, you'll be using your simple 7/8 inch ruler. We've done that before, nothing new there. Let's move these out of the way here. I'm going to bring out our flannel board, and it's going to be easier to understand. In fact, we're going to need that piece, aren't we? Put that right in position. Some of this we've already sewn together just to expedite the process of this particular video, because we still need to get into finishing our quilt. We've added sashing and cornerstones, which we'll be going through in the next video to help you finish up your project. So as you can see, this needs to be kind of assembled from the middle out. We have our 2 triangles, which we would place right sides together. Nothing new or surprising about that. You're sewing a 1/4 inch seam allowance and we're pressing to the darker. Here with the triangle, right sides together. And because this is where my bulk is, we're going to be pressing to the lighter purple. Then you'll add this one, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam, press to the light purple. Here, right sides together, pressing toward, we pressed toward our dark purple on that, we sure did. Then you'll simply bring this together. Let's check how we pressed on that one. Looks like we pressed open, and that's logical. We kind of talked about that in the last video. When it's no advantage, if I press that way, there's a lot of bulk. If I press that way, there's a lot of bulk. Spread that out and go ahead and press that seam open. And then you'll have this portion. Same here. press that seam open. Then with your sides here, 1/4 inch seam allowance, press that seam open or toward here as you prefer. Again here, and then simply add your corner. So as now, you need to see me sew. You understand the process here. You understand good habits, 1/4 inch seam allowances, pressing, pinning as necessary. Now in the next video, we'll be going through the assembly of all of the blocks together along with the sashing and the cornerstones. If your blocks do not measure 12.5, so let's go ahead and get out the ruler real quick. I like to go ahead and measure my blocks before I start putting them together to make sure, do my blocks actually measure 12.5? This is where I love to have the OmniGrip 12.5 inch ruler. And sometimes 12.5 is a very common size for blocks. I would just get this ruler. If you're going to have a background that's 12.5, it's wonderful to just put this on your larger spinning mat, cut all the way around and you have your background. If your block doesn't measure 12.5 inches, you have a little bit of leeway, but not a whole bunch. I hope you have absolutely had as much fun as I have with the intermediate series. I will see you again in the next video while we put all of our blocks together and we finish up your quilt.